So I am Kristen Howerton. I blog at Rage Against the Minivan.
And I'm Paul Martin. I blog at paulosophia.com.
So Paul and I are old friends, and we are both political junkies. However, we kind of come from different perspectives.
Yeah.
I lean very left. I'm very liberal.
And I lean right. I'm a Republican.
Okay. So we are going to each week be talking about the sort of new happenings in this election as we're coming closer and closer to November. So let's start with the caucus.
Yeah.
That happened Monday?
Monday, yeah. And lots to talk about. I think, to me, just how volatile polling is. Trump
Right.
was this dominant figure, and he was going to win.
According to the polls.
Yeah. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bernie and Hillary in a virtual tie. I think there were two, tenths of a percentage point,
Yeah.
a few hundred votes or something.
I think it was 1%.
Yeah.
Speaking of his disdain for the 1%.
Yeah.
That's super close.
Yeah, it's
Super
close, and it's also there's so many candidates on the right, on the Republican side,
So
with
many.
Rubio and
Yeah.
Trump and Cruz, and then you have Kasich and none of these. I'm reading that one of the challenges right now is none of the establishment Republicans want to drop out because they're not the kinds of people that quit. So Christie, Kasich,
Are still in.
Bush, they're still in,
Despite getting, really small percentages.
super small percentages, and so it was volatile, and or the polls are proving to be volatiles.
Yeah, and surprising. I just don't think anyone can predict anything from the polls.
Yeah, no.
Well, the caucus, I'm a little bit confused about caucuses in general. Obviously, we live in California. It's not a state that does that.
Right.
What's the deal with them?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you I knew the history of them, but clearly they require much more than turning up, to your local school and punching a chart. I think those are a thing of the past, but you show up, right, to these.
You
schools.
show up, which I think is so interesting because it kind of self-selects who can be involved. If you're a parent, it means you have to have gotten a babysitter. It's a lot of effort. It sounds like to get to this.
Right.
And then it's a couple hours long.
Yeah.
People are stumping. People are getting up and talking.
Right.
I read that in some places they literally have everyone stand in a circle based on who they want to vote for, and then when that circle's too small, they tell them to move to. It's very interactive.
Right.
But it seems like it would, sort of make voting difficult for some people.
Yeah, and it's and again, this is where many are saying, and Donald Trump, here we go, but that there's a big difference between the kind of person that will go work a 9-hour day, come home, make dinner, get on the road in a foggy, cold Iowa, go sit for 2 hours, and eventually so that he or she could cast the vote. And Trump's constituency largely is comprised of people that haven't voted, are very passionate about things, but they're not going to go do that, especially the primary,
right?
Where Cruz spent months going and getting and collecting and motivating real voters, the kinds of people that would go out, and that seems to be one of the big differences.
Yeah, interesting. So a bunch of people though did drop out after the caucus. Who did we lose?
So on your side, so to speak, Martin O'Malley, who was kind of a token. He dropped out immediately, or suspended. I don't know what do they say?
Suspended their campaign.
They don't suspend them; they end them.
I think they don't want to use the word dropping out.
Yeah, they're not losers. We're not losers. We're just suspending it.
Totally, it's active.
We're permanently
not
suspending it. Yes. And then on the right, the Republicans. Let's see, Huckabee, and Santorum, and was that it? Was there someone else? I don't know if there was someone else.
I don't remember.
Yeah. So the field is narrowing slowly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Slowly. I feel like the field is really narrowed on the Democratic side. There's really two contenders at this point.
Yeah.
Republican.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy.
Yeah, and again, it's causing a lot of problems because if today Christie, Kasich, Bush dropped out, Rubio's going to grab those votes.
I would think so.
And surpass most likely Cruz and Trump.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine being someone like Marco Rubio. He is putting policies aside, who's kind of a charming person. He's
Yeah.
he's young and he's got vision. He's
Yeah.
charismatic, and he's on the cusp of if Kasich, Christie, and Bush, tank and get 1-2% in Iowa, it could be that they drop out, and suddenly you're going to see the emergence of potentially the Republican candidate. A lot of people think.
Because I agree. It feels like Trump's contender hasn't really emerged yet.
No, but
which is problematic.
Which is problematic. I saw Trump last
night.
Get
it together.
Yeah,
the party needs to get it together.
I know they did. Well, I mean, there's and there's talk of if Trump would have prevailed, a broker convention, but that's becoming less and less likely because it just doesn't seem like Trump. He did an amazing job in terms of garnering attention and media attention, and we'll see. I mean, I could be wrong. I hope that I'm not wrong, but again, there's a difference between people that actually go out and vote and people that are just passionate and they want to stir things up. So.
Okay, if you guys have questions, we missed the last one, but if you have a question, type it in now while we're actually paying attention, or a comment that you wanted us to respond to. So what's next in the pipe?
Well, what's
coming up?
Yeah, so we have New Hampshire on Tuesday.
Yeah.
But what is just, to me, so fascinating about this election is for the last 4, 5, 6 months, on the Republican side, there have been fireworks. You've had Trump, you've had Cruz, you've had all, 17 candidates, I think, to start.
Yeah.
And most of the attention has been on the Republican side of things. But now you have Bernie Sanders in a recent poll, I forgot which one, but one of the major national polls have him tied on a national scale with Hillary.
Yeah.
Where in December she was ahead by 30 points.
Yeah.
And so
he is really.
And you're not too disappointed about that.
I'm not disappointed. I'm a fan, but he's really taking some ground.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, let's talk about the debate from last night.
Right.
Last night was a Democratic debate. Things got a little tense between the two of them.
They did.
And I feel like they've been extremely friendly and diplomatic.
Yeah.
But Hillary, I feel like, was fed up.
Yeah. Yeah, she should be. I mean, not should be, but she has reason to be defensive. I mean, this thing's turning into now remember Obama and Hillary in 2008, and that became a very heated, 2 or 3 months, and they were going at each other. And now with Sanders rising in the polls, this is turning into a real contest. And last night, you have Sanders bringing up, all kinds of different things, but one being, a speaking fee that Hillary received from Goldman Sachs for $675,000.
Yeah.
And in the Sanders world, Goldman Sachs is kind of the preeminent cause of the financial.
It's everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's going after her for these things, and she didn't really have an answer. She said she would look into it, which amongst the progressive, amongst the younger people, amongst the individuals out there that think that Wall Street is responsible for the financial collapse and everything, she's not doing herself any favors, but she's trying to paint herself as a true progressive. What do you think? Is she?
I mean, when you really, I think she is. I think that her ideals are progressive, but I think her methodology is still old politics. And if you look at, who has given the most to each of their campaigns, at the end of the day, the top winners on Hillary are big business and banks.
Yeah.
And the top winners for Bernie are unions and people.
Right. Smaller gifts.
He is, and the person who is giving the money is the person who wags the dog.
Right.
I mean, we can all sit here and say, well, I hope that wouldn't be true for Hillary once she gets in office. But if she gets in office, she's going to be looking at her own re-election in 4 years, which is that whole broken system of campaign finance.
Right.
So do I totally trust that she's not going to still pander to all of these people who are basically getting her elected currently?
Right.
I don't want to really take that risk.
Yeah, and she's such a polarizing figure. I had, I think on Facebook or somewhere, written something or my blog, and I had said something like, "Hey Republicans, you have a socialist or a Hillary, who do you hate more?"
Right.
And I had one of my Republicans say, "Defeat Hillary at all costs." And it was intriguing to me because this is a very kind of, wealthy Orange County Republican saying he would choose a socialist, a self-proclaimed socialist over Hillary,
Yes.
which baffles me because you would think, wait, you certainly would not. You're a full-blown, capitalist.
Yeah.
You would rather have a self-proclaimed socialist than Hillary, who would be far more centrist than Sanders.
Well, because I think the reason the right dislikes Hillary is very different than why I dislike her. I dislike her for the same reasons that I dislike many of the Republican candidates. They're pulling money from, but I think that Hillary's polarizing because she's a woman. She's a middle-aged woman. I think there's a lot of misogyny involved in the dislike of her. I think that, I just think she's very threatening to a lot of men. She's very pro-woman. She's very feminist. She's never hid that. And I think that people are alarmed by that and feel threatened in the same way that they feel threatened by, the U.S. not being white majority in 50 years. It's just I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly is. We have this election, and I'm so happy that we're doing this because you have Trump, you have a socialist, you have Hillary Clinton. I mean, how much better could it get in terms of pure entertainment?
Yes.
Which we should be thinking about our country.
Which is fun now. It will not be fun
Well, and Rubio's intriguing to me because he has consistently, I think perhaps of all the candidates, other than John Kasich, he has kept this a very on script, on message campaign, but certainly attacking Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. Here's what Rubio does. He attacks Obama and Clinton, but everything else is, for the large part, positive. It's about the future. It's about younger generation. It's about not making America great because it's a piece of crap country, which is Trump's message.
Right.
But it's more this kind of inspirational JFK vibe that you can hear in him. And what will be interesting, it'll be interesting to see whether the general Republican electorate gets behind a positive message, which Rubio to a large extent is trying to convey, versus Cruz and Trump, who are just running a campaign based on fear.
Which my perception of the Republican Party in the last decade has been they have run on fear.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just you listen to these, listen to the last Republican debate, and you would think we were living in Haiti or something. Like an amalgamation of Haiti and North Korea, with Hitler as the president.
Yes.
I mean, they portray America as, and I get in the car every day and I look around, and it's a pretty damn good place to live.
Yeah.
But they, Trump, Cruz talk about this disaster of a country that we have. Rubio is striking this more hopeful chord, and Nixon, I think, famously said, and I think many others, but people are ultimately ruled or motivated by fear more than hope.
Yeah.
And so you see Trump, right? You see Cruz.
Absolutely.
But with Rubio, there seems to be this idea he's going to say, hope's going to get us there, and we'll see in the weeks and months ahead.
I have to mention something that has been happening to me this week, which is that I have been all over the internet attacked by a group of white supremacists who have sort of mobilized in their disdain for me because I have adopted black children. Anyway, it's been interesting to sort of wade into this world of white supremacy and dive into their websites and forums and stuff like that. It's not something that I had done a lot of research on, but they are so pro-Trump, without question. I mean, 99.9% of them are pro-Trump, and they are certain that he is going to usher in their ideals, their ideals of white supremacy, like putting white people back, kicking out all the refugees. And I just think that says a lot about what Trump is communicating. That they are sure when he says make America great again that he means like make it white.
Yeah, and of course he would deny that.
I know he would, but here's the thing: when your message is that widely misinterpreted by a bunch of racists, you've got to look at it.
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't doubt, Trump's he's a brilliant mind.
I agree.
Skewed, I believe, in some fundamental ways, but
he's savvy.
He's savvy, exactly, and shrewd.
Yes.
And he understands that there's a portion of this country that likes the idea of us using common nouns like blacks, Mexicans. He's on record of calling Japanese Japs. And he understands that there's a group of people that love that language. It fires them up.
Totally.
And Muslims, of course.
Yeah.
There are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world.
Yeah.
And he speaks of them as though, they're just all these terrorists.
Oh, there's a huge population in our country who are just sick to death of being politically incorrect. Meaning, I'm tired of hiding my racism.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting that he uses that term, politically incorrect. He used it again last night in this little friendly, cozy town hall that he did in New Hampshire. But we've come a long way in the saddest sense when you can call women, pigs and Mexicans rapists and drug, and to not speak that way is being politically correct. I've had dozens of people tell me, well, he's just not politically correct. But since when do we? And this gets to your point of the white
since
supremacy.
when is that an ideal to not be politically correct?
Right.
Why would you not want to be sensitive to others?
And I think regarding race, the fact of the matter, people, is this country is shifting. It is no longer a white country.
Yeah.
And I, for sure, and I recognize prejudice in myself, even though I'm half Mexican. I can go to the beach sometimes in the summer, and sometimes, I'm not happy when the big tent shows, I'm being honest, of my own people. Yeah. And it's based on this false idea that this is somehow a country of white people. It isn't. I look white, but the sad fact is that there are millions of people that are grieved by the shifting demographic.
Yeah.
And Trump has tapped into that
grieved
anger.
And scared to death.
Scared, grieved, angered. Because America to them means white, and I think Trump has tapped into that group.
Yeah, I think
and they're supporting him overwhelmingly. Yeah. But what's interesting, I have to poke you a little bit on this one, is that on the Republican side in Iowa, we had 2 Hispanics and an African American coming in top 3 out of 4. What do you say about that?
Well, not everybody's woke, to coin a phrase, or to appropriate a phrase. I think, for example, in the case of Ben Carson, I think that there's a model minority thing happening here, where they've found safe minorities so they can say, see, we're not racist, but these are not people, I think, who are fighting about racial reconciliation. And I actually think, ironically, that Bernie and Hillary would probably do more for racial equality in our country than some of the people on the Republican side who are people of color. On that note, though, also, I actually think it is difficult for a person of color to push that needle forward because they're accused of being self-serving.
Interesting.
Which is, it's a function of white privilege, and it's bullshit. But I think, I think that has been difficult for Barack Obama. Because he's black, and so anything that he says that is, looking at racial equality, people go like, oh, he's just looking out for his own. Right. So I think he has had to really lean towards being diplomatic, and almost soft on some of those issues. Right. But I don't feel like any of the Republican candidates who are people of color are really championing Black Lives Matter, or I'm not seeing that so much.
Right. And speaking of President Obama, this week we left this out, but he went and spoke at a mosque for the first time in 7 years. I didn't read much of the fallout from that, but I'm sure many on the right are thinking.
Well, I saw all about it on the white supremacy sites.
Right. He's a Muslim.
Yes.
And in spite of speaking at the prayer breakfast, which was this week as well.
Yeah, which I heard he did an incredible job at.
Right.
I had some friends there, and they said it was like he preached a sermon, basically.
Right. Yeah. He has many times. He has professed his faith as clearly and explicitly than I have.
So you believe him?
Well, of course.
Well,
sorry,
that's
guys.
That's not an of course kind of situation for a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't really get. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just generally, they're not true.
So his profession of faith makes you believe he's a Christian.
Well, and the fact that he was baptized, was married in a Christian church,
and
spent 20 years in a Christian church, and says Jesus Christ is my Savior, and leads,
those minor things.
And then even having Rick Warren, which, the proof is in the pudding. But it's this Muslim issue now Trump and what you were talking about with the racism. I'm fearful, actually, just to see how these issues have not gone away.
No.
And when I hear what you're going through this week, it's frightening.
Yeah, it is frightening, and I feel that Trump has sort of rallied some of the latent racism. It's like he has sort of brought it to the surface and made it socially acceptable, which is frightening to me. And it's coded.
Right.
It's very coded.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, and what is just remarkable to me is how fellow Republicans have spoken so adamantly against him.
Yeah.
Which I think proves the point that he still has this constituency of generally uneducated people on the right. Ted Cruz has. George W. Bush, people have. Dick Cheney came out against him and said, "What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Muslims are not terrorists. They're regular people that take their kids to school."
Yeah.
But he has continued to. He did last night in the town hall. He literally. I wish I had the quote, but he said, "Well, we just don't know if these Muslims are terrorists or not." It's like saying we don't know if these Christians are blow up abortion clinics or not.
Right.
And he's speaking in the most
Right.
general terms, and it's resonating with voters.
Yeah. And it's inciting fear, and it's strengthening his base.
Yeah.
All right, so looking forward, we've got New Hampshire, which is when?
Tuesday.
Yes. That'll be a big one.
It's a big one, and Sanders is slotted to win by 20 to 30 points.
Interesting.
And on the Republican side, Trump's way ahead. It's not a religious state, of course.
Yeah.
And so Cruz is not going to do as well there, they think, but the thing is shifting very quickly.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire's unique in that, I was just reading today on Politico that these polls mean nothing because half to 3/4 of the voters aren't sure. Their mind isn't made up.
Yeah.
So a good, solid Democrat, many of them, half of them, they're listening to Sanders now and they're thinking, this guy makes some sense. And Hillary's got this email problem, this tie to big money. And so...
Well, and I think really what's going to push it over for Sanders is for people perceiving that he could win. I think that is his biggest, the biggest thorn in his side is the perception that he won't win, so we'll vote for Hillary.
Right.
But it's looking...
Yeah. I never thought in my lifetime that we would have a self-proclaimed socialist.
I know. And a guy who, was independent for so long, too.
Right, because he didn't affiliate, right, for most of his...
Yeah, so, he's not like someone who's really, grounding the Democratic Party as like, the strong identity as Democrats.
Right.
It's interesting. All right, so we're going to post this on both our blogs. We would love you guys to visit and comment and let us know what you think. What did you think about the caucus results? What do you think about these polls? And then if you watch the Democratic debate, tell us your opinions. And what do you think about Trump? Are we correct in our assessment that he is stoking some coded racism in our country? Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.
See you then.